Welcome to Solutions, where listening will leave you inspired by solutions to issues you or others you know may be struggling with in the public education system today. I am Olivia Wall, and I am excited to welcome my guests today, Lainie Levin and Anna Davis. Anna is a former fourth grade teacher turned technology integration coach with Northbrook Glenview School District in Illinois. She has been in this role for the past 6 years. Anna's role as a technology integration coach is to have an overall knowledge of the curriculum and help teachers utilize technology to make it engage, extend, and enhance the content. Lainie is a 26-year teaching veteran, a fierce advocate for children, for public schools, and for all things learning. Lainie is now a language arts specialist serving the needs of gifted and talented elementary school students. Inspired by the fearlessness of her students, Lainie is passionate about teaching children to see themselves as writers. She pushes them to trust in the power of their voices as they seek to make sense of the world and their place in it. Lainie is also a lifelong storyteller. She has given performances and workshops to a wide range of audiences across the country. Her work with fellow teller Yvonne Healy on using storytelling to connect generations and foster love for writing is featured in the Storytelling Classroom. You can find her shouting her many soapboxes on her blog, perfectly named Soapbox. The way I see things, shouting my heart out for all to listen. In addition to having her own blog, Lainie is a co-author on the team at Two Writing Teachers blog. Welcome, 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 Lainie and Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't realize I had done all that stuff. Hey, that's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. I'm so excited to have both of you. I kick off every episode with asking guests who an inspiring educator is from their life. Anna, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I feel like when I think of an inspiring educator, I always think of the teacher I had for both first grade and second grade. I had one of those split level classrooms that I feel like aren't often around anymore. We had first, second graders learning together. And so I had this repeated teacher, and I feel like the relationship you have and you're not so scared going into school the next year in second grade because you already had the teacher. So, Mrs. Alberti in Palatine, who was my teacher for first and second grade, I was just someone who was always supportive and always open. And I just remember loving going to school every day. And I feel like that's probably when I was thinking, I want to do this, I want to be a teacher.
Lainie, how about you?
I feel like I've been so lucky that I've had so much interaction with inspiring teachers, too many to count. But I think at the source of it all is probably Miss Stelmach, who was my composition teacher in high school. And the thing that was amazing about her was, there I was, high school sophomore, and I wasn't really applying myself or doing anything in school. And she sat me down one day and she's like, I think you can expect better of yourself. You're better than what you're doing. And just her care and her concern for me, it turned me around. And so I decided I was going to be a teacher after I had her.
I think it's incredible how one person in our life can completely change our perspective on the world around us. And now, as adults, we are all educators. And I know how critical it is to have a thought partner in this work. I want to give listeners the background story of why I wanted both of you as guests. You had a blog post on the Two Writing Teachers Stronger Together blog series. It's called How Tech Specialists Can Support Writing. So much of our work, especially over the last few years, has involved troubleshooting with technology in ways we never could have imagined. Anna, I want to borrow your words if it's okay with you.
Mhm.
The pandemic shifted educators from integrating technology to a dependency on it. Teachers who weren't as comfortable with their technical skills had to work with me, meaning you, Anna, to work with me to broaden their knowledge. And guess what? I'm not complaining. I was able to capitalize on my role more than ever to truly show teachers how we can be stronger together. Here's my concern: not everyone has an Anna.
Yes.
I was meeting with teachers last week and we were troubleshooting end makes for their writing work of cool ways to get their kids' writing out in the world. I shared your blog with them because it is an insane resource of goodness. So, Lainey and Anna, I'm going to have you offer solutions, ideas to help listeners understand how you can take a hands on job like teaching and how we can shift it to a digital learning environment with all of the tools that you are both brilliant in using as a partnership. That's the main word. It's a partnership, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Anna, I'm going to have you start the conversation. What is the role of a technology integration coach and how does it support classroom teachers in getting stronger together?
So, my role is something that varies between any school, any district. When I was getting my master's in instructional technology, I very much still loved teaching. I wasn't ready to leave the classroom. I'm only 33. I feel like I'm young to have left the classroom already to be a specialist. And so I really loved how the job, in a sense, is just as it's called. You're helping teachers and students integrate technology into their classrooms, where in the past, as we've had technology new into districts, it was more like what's a cool app you can use or what's a cool final product you can use technology for. Where my job is still a teacher. I'm still learning the curriculum just like everyone else is, but I have a broader spectrum and outside perspective as a specialist. I work specifically in a K 5 building. And so, with that, I'm looking at the curriculum and seeing how I can help teachers integrate technology in a meaningful and effective way throughout the learning process and not just as a end final product. It's helping teachers use technology in their classroom, not only in day to day activities, because our school district is fortunate enough to have one-to-one iPads, but also I teach a digital citizenship course with primary and intermediate grades that are each 5 weeks long. Now, with all the digital learners we have in kindergarten through second grade, we're focused on how to care for our iPads. How can we hold them safely? How can we take a photo? How can we record our voices? Where in upper grades, it shifts to how can I be safe online? What information am I sharing publicly on a social media page that anyone can see? So it does show the progress that I teach with these kids that I see from kindergarten all the way through fifth grade. But then with teachers, it's the perfect job in the sense that I love being able to see and interact with everyone. So I get to know everyone. I know all the kids in the school. So the job, at least in my specific district, because even I have friends who are in the tech role in the middle school, and it's very different in the middle school because kids are so much more tech savvy versus younger grades who need sometimes just that extra set of hands when using apps and things like that. But it is more than tech support. I want to say that. I feel like I'm a member of the tech team in my school district, but it's very much so like I am still a teacher. It's just I'm a teacher with that tech scope, or I'm looking at it from the tech standpoint where I can lend that to the projects or the learning objectives or the units that teachers are working on.
So, Lainey, when do you and Anna meet to collaborate? Because it sounds like you both have a heavy workload and you're juggling.
We do. And I also want to say too how great it is to collaborate with Anna because I have no job alikes in my district. I'm just kind of an island. And so being able to have somebody that I can collaborate with. And I'm glad you mentioned that, yes, you are a teacher as well, because you do help me take my curriculum and bring it to another level. And Anna and I, it's an on call sort of thing. I have a lot of projects that I work with, especially with student blogging and publication. And Anna and I help work on setting up all of the back end stuff of that with the student blogging, the accounts, and that sort of thing. Anna and I work best, I think, when I can come to her with, okay, my kids are learning this thing. We're doing this really cool project. This is the curriculum that I want kids to learn. These are the skills that I want them to have. And then I can rely on Anna for her amazing magical tech knowledge to be able to say, oh, well, that might be this app. So when we come together at the beginning of a unit, it allows us to plan through and throughout what are the things that I can do? Where are the places that she can come in and support? Where are the potential speed bumps? That sort of thing. I know we've got some fun coming up in setting up the kids on WordPress, for example. And so we'll probably be meeting a little bit more often.
And Anna, I'm dying to know what is the Triple E framework? What does that mean?
So, with technology integration, there are countless models that you can follow in a sense of it's an easy way to visualize or use it as a checklist on how to integrate technology for myself as an educator, but also if you do not have a technology integration coach or specialist in your school, it's a way to check how you're integrating technology and what that looks like. The Triple E framework that I enjoy more, there's a whole book with it that's learning first, technology second, which is really good because we want to have the objectives first before we just pop in the technology product at the end. With Triple E framework, that book actually has little mini rubrics even that you can follow. So the three E's, it's extend, enhance, and engage. We did a book study with it with the technology team and I loved it. The book has the rubrics and it goes through different chapters. The engage part is first. How is the technology you are going to use going to engage the student? More so than just, I have a device in my hands, I'm doing something with it. And then it asks these questions. Let's say I go in with an end goal in mind of I want students to create a book after their digital writing. How would that look? What would that do? And so in the Triple E framework, it questions like, will this technology change the way they're learning? Will this technology create something new you couldn't do on paper pencil? So it has those guiding questions, especially if you don't have a technology person in your district. It's a great way to check what is the reason I'm using this technology. And I remember in the book, they had little case studies. And one of the case studies was this amazingly awesome mock election. Students were doing different technology questions and running this full election. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be rated on the rubric so high. And it wasn't, because the only rate that it got high was for engagement, where then it makes you think, oh, we can do so much more. And with digital writing, extending it to be some other final product that's not just an essay written on a piece of paper that you print out. And so it's just an easy way to get your feet wet with technology. It has rubrics and easy to follow questions of what does the technology really enhance or engage or extend.
Lainey, I want to use your words that describe so beautifully what Anna does for you and your thought partnership. Anna works miracles. It's not just that she comes with a wide range of knowledge about apps, strategies, and hardware. Anna helps teachers like me articulate goals for students, choose effective and exciting ways to get there, and she offers hands on support, both in and out of the classroom. I can only hope that every school has an Anna. What does the collaboration look like when you're planning before a unit kicks off, during a unit, and even after a writing unit of study finishes up?
I think that one of the most powerful ways that Anna and I have worked together is in getting students to share and offer feedback to one another online. So we had this unit where we were setting up what we call trusted reader circles in our classroom, where students would read and respond thoughtfully to each other's work. It started with me sharing my vision with Anna for what I wanted kids to do in terms of how they could read and respond to each other. And she helped me work through some of the logistics of what would that look like on Seesaw, for example, as kids would post their blog posts and other kids could maybe respond to them. We would check in every so often to see how that was going. And then I would go through the unit with that. And then at one point, we would realize, okay, so the kids have taken this farther than what Seesaw can give us. So where do we go from there? We went back into the planning process and wound up on fan school. She helped me with the setup and training the kids and helping them figure out their way around that. And then it wound up being that the kids grew out of fan school and it became super clunky. So she's been working with me both last year and this year. Actually, our children have their own blogs on WordPress now, and they've been getting their writing out into the world. And we're working to kick it off for our students this year. The thing about working with Anna is that, yes, she helped me with the very seed, but she's been there with me all throughout the process to evaluate how the kids are doing and see, okay, how can we push forward now? How can we push forward now? And so that's been just transformative for the work and for our kids.
When you say that they've outgrown a certain platform, what indicators did you have?
I think for me as a teacher, it just became super messy and difficult to manage. For example, in Seesaw, what we discovered was kids were responding well to one another and giving some really thoughtful feedback. And they would write a paragraph on a literary response to one another's writing. And Seesaw has the capability of posting the comments, but it was very difficult to get an online conversation going. With my own blog, one of the things that I appreciate is if someone comments, I can respond back to them and we can start a discussion online. And we get to know each other as writers, we get to know each other as people, and there are so many benefits to that. Seesaw didn't really allow us to do that. So that's how we knew the kids were doing more than we were able to manage. They were ready for more. And that's when we moved over to Fan School, where the kids were able to write back to one another. When the kids were blogging and posting, it worked really well at the start, but then it became really unwieldy to try and navigate back and forth between the kids' work. And so Anna and I went back to the drawing board to see what else we could do to keep the focus of letting kids share their writing and having those interactive conversations online.
My younger son has used Seesaw for years at his elementary school, but in a good way, every post, every comment has to be approved by the educator. And so it's a safeguard, yet it really limits that back and forth that the students can have. Anna, what is digital writing and how does it extend the walls of the classroom? Could you speak to that?
Yeah, so digital writing in the most basic sense is instead of writing in a composition notebook that we all grew up doing, you're composing in some digital format. That could be a basic word processing application. So, my district, we use Google Docs as our most favorite word processing app that we have Google integration with Google Apps for Education. But also with digital writing, it changes the whole way that we think of writing, particularly with the writing process where you are starting with a small moment and you're trying to then continue that with how can I make this one small moment more detailed? How can I add things like characters, traits, conflict resolution, dialogue, figurative language, all of that. Where when you have paper pencil, I remember when I was in school, they would have me skip a line when I was writing in my composition notebook so that you could have that space for either the teacher to write little carrots in of add something here, where digital writing then allows that one doc to be your living, breathing revision history, editing, commenting from teachers, from students. In Google Docs, you can have that collaborative aspect. You can share this Google Doc with a peer conferencing partner. You guys can share each other's writing. And then because it's living, it changes all the time, where you don't really see necessarily the process. But in Google Docs, there's the revision history. So you can see the dates, how much has been added, how much has been deleted, how much has been rearranged, where all of that is able to be done right on the document. And that could be said to if you're using Pages for your word processing, or if you're using Microsoft Word, the digital writing part of it, I feel like throughout the writing process is what has completely changed how you edit, revise, comment, collaborate. It's all within that one digital piece of writing.
So I have to share, last week I was working with middle high school teachers and actually third grade teachers were in the mix. We were all watching Chris Tavani teaching a learning lab lesson. All of the adults were on the perimeter of the room. Sam Bennett had set up a Google Doc that we all had edit access. We were documenting everything we saw and heard Chris do and then connecting it with research. We obviously do not want to speak to each other while Chris is in the middle of teaching. So we're able to give comments back and forth to each other silently within the Google Doc. But Anna and Lainie, something happened. It was a tragedy. Someone accidentally deleted the entire doc. The whole table went poof, gone. I watched Sam, who is really composed, just her face went white. And she was like, someone deleted the doc. Someone deleted the doc. And all we had to do was go back into the revision history, and I went right down through and clicked over and over until it magically reappeared. The person that deleted it was not divulged because who cares? We just found the goods. But not only was it a critical moment for us as adults because this document was a gorgeous piece of all of our learning and what we were seeing together, but it's just so valuable for an educator to be able to see the child's footprints of how their thinking evolves that you really can never have with just the pen and paper revisions, right?
And what I would also add to that too is as a teacher, I'm always really reluctant to write on a kid's work in any form. And the thing that I love about Google Docs is the comments feature. So it allows me to kind of sticky note a kid's work basically at places where maybe I'm trying to connect a little bit more as a reader, or whether I'm just really excited about some language a kid used or whatever it is, it allows me to respond to my kids' writing in a way that also respects and honors the work that they've done.
Lainey, I'm wondering too, is such a seasoned educator. I have heard parents say, COVID had our kids on screens nonstop. We want to go back to pencil and paper, composition books. They don't need to be on the tech all the time. Yet we're living in a digital world and it's our responsibility to prep them. How do you respond to families that say, I want my child on less tech?
Yeah, and honestly, I have less of that from parents and more of it from the kids themselves. There are some kids who actually, when it comes to reading, when it comes to writing, they prefer analog. So, what do I do with them? And I feel like, especially working with Anna, there are a lot of tech solutions to that. It could just be simply that a kid does do their writing with the Flair pens and the composition notebook, and then they upload a photograph so that they can share their work. They don't necessarily have to do all of their work online, but the sharing options are still there for them. I feel like there are hybrid ways of meeting kids in the middle, meeting families in the middle, because I do understand and respect that sometimes it is nicer to go analog.
And Anna, I need to have a better understanding. You are both in Illinois. In New York State, where I am, there's something called 2D compliance. It's education law 2D, where it's basically regulatory changes to increase information security and privacy measures. I've heard you mention WordPress. I've heard you mention Google, Seesaw. Do you have a regulation like that around safety that you have to dance around in Illinois?
So we do have something called SOPA. It's SOPPA. It was passed, I think last year or the year before. So basically, because we have Google Apps for Education and all the students have Google accounts through our domains, it is protected, it's very restricted. Even the student email accounts, everyone has an email account, but they actually can't email each other. They can only email teachers, which is kind of nice. So we have our District 30 domain, and then we have our student domain, which is different. So we have different restrictions. You read a blog, you read a website, you see an article, you see something on social media that's a cool tech tool. But now with SOPA, we have to be a little bit more hesitant with, do we have an app or website that's already with our SOPA compliance? The director of technology in our district has to have this website that lists every app specifically to log in. You can use websites if they have features you can use without logging in, and that's okay. If it has an option to continue with Google, the kids are just like, oh, if it says Google, we can use our Google accounts. And so with that, we have to be mindful when it first came out to tell teachers, because they might try things on their own without me, which is of course fine. But then if they have done that login with Google option, that's when it becomes the SOPA issue. Because once you log in with Google, then you have that pop up. Can this website access, allow Google Apps for Education? Because it gives certain privacy things. It gives your email, it gives other pieces of information just by hitting that allow button. And so we have to be more careful now with anything that we're using as a new feature, new resource, new website, new app that requires a login. Most websites, I feel like now, at least in Illinois, or they have something on even their website that it's like you can download the SOPA compliance form and then we upload it to the District 30 website where we have everything listed. But we do have the laws that we have to follow, basically with the privacy of what student information is shared and accessible by third party websites.
Yeah, it's fascinating how each state has their own spin on it,
Mhm.
and it's all to protect our children, which I'm grateful for. It's a lot to navigate and to figure out. So with that said, Anna, which platforms do you prefer and recommend? There's a gorgeous graphic in your blog post that I'll make sure to link in the show notes. But what are your favorites for platforms and also learning management systems?
Learning management systems is Seesaw and Schoology. Schoology we have for grades 3 through 8, and then Seesaw we have for grades K 5. So third, fourth, and fifth grade have an overlap of both of those management systems. When I was in fourth grade, I had to learn both of those platforms and find the balance of why do I have both? How do I use both? In technology, we say there's a 3 click rule or a 3 tap rule because we have iPads that if it takes more than 3 clicks or taps to get to wherever you need to go, it's harder for the kid. So, Schoology, I much prefer for upper grades. It's a great place to post resources, submit assignments. It's more private in the sense that Seesaw is a linear feed of everything that's happening in the classroom. Once a student posts, you can change the setting where it can be visible to everyone in the class or private to only the one student and their families. But with Schoology, I feel like you're submitting things that often are just being sent to the teacher. Where Seesaw is more of that see each other's work, collaborate in that sense where you can share and post and see everything. But what Schoology offers that Seesaw doesn't is then Schoology has a more organized way of a virtual filing cabinet in the sense that if I posted a realistic fiction writing unit in my English language arts course, everything's already preloaded from PowerSchool, everyone's rostered, it's all easy, it's at their fingertips. But now within that course or in that folder of this unit, I can post video resources, links, rubrics, assignments. You can have discussion board posts. Schoology is more like Desire to Learn, Blackboard, things that you feel like you often use in higher education. It's very similar to that, where Seesaw, you can't really post something that's easily able to be retrieved again.
Got it.
If I'm posting a resource or a PDF or a rubric or an expectation, things like that, it's all in a feed that just feels endless on Seesaw. So
Yeah.
Schoology is a better place, I feel like, to hang up those resources for referral back to kids can navigate it in that way. Where Seesaw, I take more of a publishing way. And it doesn't have to be published end product work. It could be process or I shared this. I wanted to share it with my teacher, my family, where I feel like that's the difference with Seesaw is that it's more sharing and the constant posting of work, where Schoology is more of like a virtual housing area of resources and content in that way.
I was gonna say, it's sort of like Schoology is the course binder with the materials and everything, and, Seesaw's the bulletin board, where you just have everything splashed all over.
Lainey, we need some of your storytelling skills, please. I wanted to hear stories of children that you've worked with and remind me, what age group do you work with right now?
So I work with kids 1st through 5th grade who have
Okay.
been identified as gifted, talented in the area of English language art. I have groups that I pull out and I teach for a certain number of minutes per week. And then I also push in. I work with classroom teachers. So I kind of go sandwiched in between. I benefit from the collaborative efforts with Anna, and then I get to turn around and do the same with classroom teachers.
So throw some stories at us. What are your favorite moments?
I'm thinking about, in particular, my 5th graders from last year. It was our first year out of 2 years that the kids were actually in the same physical space where we were learning together. And they just had this need for interaction. And those kids in particular, they were the first group that we worked with WordPress with. And that was the blogging where they could just put up blog posts, not just if I was assigning something, but on their own accord. Some of them were writing the latest, greatest novel, and they would publish chapters and have people waiting for each individual installment, like a Charles Dickens serial. And I just remember a couple of my kids in particular reflecting to me how seen they felt in putting out the work that they were putting out. The comments and the feedback, it wasn't just like, good job. They experienced validation. There were a couple of kids who were really going through some tough times at home, and to have there be some kind of a space where they could put up their thoughts, whatever it was that they were, and have someone respond to them, wow, that seems hard, or wow, I never really thought about that, or wow, you've made me think about this in a whole new different way. To have that sort of validation and grounding was a game changer for some of those kids. And we're sending them off to middle school knowing that as they are approaching this time where everything is upside down, they know that they can fall back on writing. They know that they can fall back on expressing themselves as a way of affirming their identity and asserting their place in the world. I think about a fifth grader that I currently have, and I think back to the time that they had with me as a fourth grader. This is actually a kid that I've worked with since first grade. If you look in the dictionary under the definition of perfectionist, this kid's picture is right there. It's a kid who would spend hours on an assignment doing it and then doing it over and then doing it over. There's a lot of insecurity that they had about sharing their work and putting it out into the world because I remember they said to me, Mrs. Levin, my stuff isn't as good as anybody else's. I can't put mine next to theirs because it's horrible. And she was actually using words like that. And so I was trying to figure out how can we move her forward. What we wound up doing with the class was establishing these trusted reader circles where kids would offer one another meaningful feedback. And it wasn't just, hey, nice work. Hey, I liked this, but hey, I really connected to what you said about this. Or I saw that you're having a really hard time with this. And I just wanted to let you know that I go through the same thing. I get angry about the same things. I feel sad about the same things. And what this person discovered was that they were a lot more articulate and they were a lot more thoughtful and they had a lot more to say than they gave themselves credit for. And by the end of the year, they were going with their classmate and making a presentation to the rest of the class to promote the idea of trusted reader circles and getting the rest of their classmates to do it. Now, when we have writing, this person is a leader in terms of the risk that they're taking and putting their writing out there. There's still the insecurity, there's still perfectionism, but their attitude about it is so much healthier, and I think that's because of the way that we were able to use technology and use writing to let the kids support one another. You see why I like soapboxes. I just feel so strongly that technology is a way for kids to use writing to help reveal and shape their identity, and it's so amazing to watch it happen.
It's beautiful. And I think too, as adults, when we put our writing out there in the world, it's a risk we're taking and it's scary. And to allow kids that experience to feel the fear, yet also get feedback and come out on the other side of it, I think that's amazing. That's a great story.
Absolutely, and I think that's why we called it Trusted Reader Circle is because it's an act of courage, it's an act of trust to put our writing out there, and have that faith that other people are going to be gentle with it.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good one, Lainey. I like it.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good one. Anna, you've mentioned the two main learning management systems, and then you also offer different apps that you think are amazing. There's Pages, Canva, Poplet, Book Creator, Google Slides, Time Lapse, and Camera App. How are those apps supportive of writing in and out of the classroom?
So that goes back to when I'm working with teachers, whether it's Laney, whether it's classroom teachers, and what do they want their end product to be, which is where the partnership together is include me in the beginning. I love to be involved. And I feel like I've worked really hard in the past few years. When you're working with people in the beginning, you're taking that learning first, technology second. What do you want teachers or students to share once they have done this writing? Is it a realistic fiction story where you're making a book trailer about your writing and you're going to use a video creation tool like iMovie or Apple Clips to make your story come to life? Is it a nonfiction writing unit where you're making an informational book? Are you making an infographic or a brochure where Pages and Book Creator have awesome templates with book producing and publishing? Canva is actually new to us this year, which I cannot talk enough about. I feel like I've used it in so many units already this year with making an infographic to teach someone about online phishing scams that we have in digital citizenship. You have a brochure for third grade that you're researching Native Americans and the European exploration and how that comes together. Well, give us a brochure about how that all can be taught to someone else. With Canva, they have great templates with infographics, brochures, newsletters, presentations, but also it's great for younger grades. We used Google Slides and Seesaw blogs to actually do some digital pen pal work. Younger grades, they're not producing full essays like upper grades are. We worked around that with the technology where within the Seesaw class, it's private to only the students and the families that are connected. But you can publish to a Seesaw blog, which is basically a public version of your Seesaw course. It could be more of a final product. Let's share out the information on a blog. But also, Seesaw is great where they have curated a list of public Seesaw blogs across the country where you can then connect with another city, state, with another classroom. So it's taking digital writing and making it something fun, extending those walls of the classroom and creating things. Because again, it doesn't have to just be, I wrote my essay, here's my paragraphs, here's everything I added, let me print it and put it in a binder and save this, or publish it on Seesaw Schoology just so it's there and digital and done. But it's how you can take it farther. There's so many options to take digital writing just to make it more engaging, more fun. How does a student want to share their work?
Anna and Lainie, this weekend I experienced another Canva success. I love Canva. My younger son, Henry, is creating a comic strip with a group of friends in his class. It's evolved for a year and a half now, and
Wow.
they wanted to create t shirts. So he had a buddy come over this weekend. Henry just thought I would know how to do this, apparently. And so he said, Mom, we're going to create a drawing and then you're going to make it into a t shirt on Canva. His buddy drew this beautiful graphic and we scanned it into Canva, and they were absolutely in awe because Canva also has clothing options. And we were able to easily choose whether it was on a hoodie, whether it was on a
Oh,
t-shirt.
cool.
They wanted, of course, the white t-shirt because they didn't want the paper outline to be white in the background. They wanted it just to blend in. The front are all the characters in the comic strip. In the back, it's the crew that saved the world. Canva has such possibilities. I've created stickers with graphics for the podcast. It's just amazing for our children to see that they have a voice, obviously beyond the classroom, but also that you can convey your voice in such a myriad of ways, right? The idea that you both work in partnership. This never stands alone. And I was saying to Lainey before we started recording that so often teaching, we show up to school, we close our door, we teach. It's isolating, but technology is a way for us to crack open that isolation and connect with others all over the world in some cases. To quote from your blog, working with a technology specialist or coach in your district is a partnership. The expertise of each will naturally align with what you want to create. I rely on teachers for the content objectives, and the teacher can rely on me for the technology apps, websites, or hardware needed to be successful. This is a yin and yang. You are going back and forth. It's evolving. You have to be flexible. And I want to leave listeners with what both of you think is our call to action. What do we need to get this started in our buildings? Lainey, what would you say if there is not a tech specialist? And then Anna, what's a good place to start if there is?
If there's no tech specialist, I think it's just on the teacher number 1 to start jumping in and taking a few risks in thinking, okay, so maybe there's a new app out there. I may have to do some more of the groundwork and check out what folks are saying on Twitter or on Instagram. What are people talking about? And figuring out ways to just give it a go. When my lessons crash and burn, and I do have lessons that crash and burn, the kids are actually really forgiving of that. There might be times where I jump into tech and try to muscle through and it just isn't working. Okay, so we'll try something else. I think that's how I've managed my way if I don't have an Anna around me.
You can find a buddy, get someone who's also open to taking risks, trying something out, even if it's not the same grade level. Your ideas naturally and organically will mold together. Lainey and I this morning talking about coming on this podcast. It's like it just naturally happens when you have a good relationship with someone and you're open to anything. And just like Lainey said, with the students who are open to teachers who sometimes have those lessons that just don't go as planned, where it also humanizes us. If you like use it as a teachable moment, oops, that didn't work out for me. What can I do next time differently? It shows not only that it's okay to make mistakes, but also how can we learn from them? How can we adapt? How can we not get frazzled or, have that ruin what our plan was? How can we be flexible?
Yeah. Anna, even as we were recording, we were playing around with tech. And if all else fails in life, just restart.
Just
Do
restart.
do a hard restart
That
and
is that's the answer to a lot of technology questions. Have you
right?
restarted your computer? Have you restarted your phone? Have you restarted your iPad? Let's try
That's
those
it.
first.
Step 1. And so I can't thank you both enough for taking the time after your long day. I value the idea of having someone to take risks with because this is such a messy business we're in, and we have to have someone to bounce ideas off of and really allow our children's voices to reach far and wide with authentic audiences and so they can see the power of their words. It's only going to get richer for them as they get older if they can see and get feedback from an audience right away. Thank you so, so much, both of you, for taking the time to connect today.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Solutions is a podcast created, produced, and edited by me, Olivia Wall. Special thanks to my guests, Lainie Levin and Anna Davis. Thanks to my older son, Benjamin, who created the music that's playing in the background. If you like Solutions, please share, rate, review, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Solutions Podcast. If you want to reach out, the email is solutionspodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to talk about us nicely on social media, and please keep listening. Let's continue finding inspiration together.